Good afternoon, everyone. So with that, we'll move into our session with USISPF, Power of Dialogue, Advancing the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. And I would like to welcome Dr. Mukesh AGHI onto stage. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum.
Thank you. Thank you, Parisa. And this is an important topic, and I'll tell you why, because it impacts almost 3 billion people. So before we get into conversation, let me invite my panelists. First one is BHAWNA, heading the HP in India itself as the CEO there. BHAWNA. Then I have RENATA coming in from Trieste. We just did an event together. And then I have APARNA from Zoom. Welcome. I think IMAC is a concept which is taking shape very, very fast. India, Middle East, European corridor. It impacts initially 8 countries, starting from India, and it basically copies the old Silk Route, where Europeans would come to India and pick up spices, silk, gold, and take it back to Europe. And the objective here is to rebuild that golden road itself. And the combined GDP of these countries is roughly around $47 trillion. But more important is the impact it has on over 3 billion people is going to be very, very significant. So I think on that note, why don't we just have a couple of minutes of opening remarks, and then we'll get into Q&A session, and then discussion with the audience itself. So let me ask RENATA to start with.
Yep. So just a round of introduction, right?
Yeah.
So RENATA CASARO from Schaeffler AG, a German company based in Bavaria. I'm based personally in Berlin, heading the small department of global risk and macroeconomic analysis.
Thank you. I'm BHAWNA AGARWAL. I'm the MD for HPE in India. Absolutely a pleasure to be here and hear from all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
And I'm BAWA. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Zoom. I'm sure you've heard of it. We're an AI-first platform, obviously enabling human connection through collaboration and multiple products. We're not just meetings, folks. We're not just meetings. But.
Well, thank you. Welcome. I think we have 3 corporate leaders from 3 different geographies, running large companies, complex companies in complex environment. Let me ask RENATA first. The first question. You basically handles geopolitical risk for Schaeffler, looking at where they are basically moving forward. And how do you see IMAC as an opportunity when you look forward, having this corridor being built between India, Middle East, and Europe?
Yes, it's very important. We are a manufacturer, so we are active in automotive, industrial, so rail, planes, wind turbines, defense, off-road. So we make things, right? We produce things. And if you consider that we use every day 7,000 tons of steel, which is 1 Tour Eiffel worth of steel, and we moved in a year 27,000 TEUs in terms of containers, this gives you an idea how much trade corridors are important for us. We're present globally, but APAC totally is 14% of our sales, which are 25 billion, so it's not really peanuts. And India, of course, is the biggest contributor. We are in India since 65 years. And we are there with a growth of 12%. So considering that the other most important country in APAC is Japan, and also that in the automotive, but also the industrial, robotic, renewable energy sectors, and infrastructure give incredible drive and chances in the area. That's why for us it's important also to look into the IMEC as a trade route in which we want to be more present, because we'll also reinforce our commercial investment in the Mediterranean, not only in Eastern Europe as we've done historically, and of course US, and of course China. That's of course that's a given in a sense.
Well, thank you. IMAC is not just a physical corridor. The whole objective is to, yes, drive the traffic, the trade, skills, but it's also a digital corridor. And Bhavna, you are basically running HPE India, and HPE has the honor of having the fastest supercomputer in the world now. And hopefully one day it'll shift to quantum. But you're doing a lot of manufacturing in India, leveraging, and you have a large headcount of people supporting global environment also. So tell us, from your perspective, when you look at building a corridor from a digital perspective, your thoughts.
I completely agree with you when you say that it's not just another physical corridor. It is actually a very strategic economic corridor. And when you look at that, it's also about future-proofing connectivity. It's also about future-proofing the supply chain challenges in an increasingly fragmented world. Right now that we are looking at, we talked about some of the geopolitical issues some time ago. There's so much that's happening right now. And for IMAC to work really well, I think the digital infrastructure needs to be extremely important. That needs to be like the backbone. And if I were to just simplify it even further, I think it'll need to do three things very well. One is connect, second is compute, and third is security at scale. And if you were to just compare the entire connect part with the nervous system of the entire IMAC, it needs that seamless digital connectivity. It needs that high capacity data networks so that data can move a lot faster than physical goods. Similarly, when you were to look at the entire compute piece, a lot of action is going to happen, on the ports, railways, maritime, the energy hubs, logistics hubs, everywhere. And that's where it's really important that that intelligence needs to be brought in, whether people are operating at the edge or in the cloud. So that's the second part. And third is, which is the most important part of all, which is security at scale. Because I think IMAC will completely fail if it does not really have this built-in resilience and security built into it from day one.
Which is true. And I think, leveraging the payment gateway, for example, and providing security on that, and you are doing quite a bit of that in India. But let me come to APARNA. COVID came, and everybody got to know Zoom. And the concept of distributed workforce became much more efficient, effective. And I think the younger generation is still hooked on to that. They don't want to come back to the office, and they want to leverage Zoom. But I think more important is you replaced some of the older technology of Cisco and IBM and basically democratized Zoom in a very fast manner. So your perspective, when you look at a distributed workforce working across the corridor, and how do you see that moving?
Absolutely. Yes, we did. We came of age, I guess, during COVID. But really, the Zoom story is all about empowering human connection and for businesses and for governments alike to drive economic activity. If you think of what the use cases were in COVID and even what we continue to do now, and I do agree that, I tell my son that you need to go back. If you're going to get a job, you need to go into the office. He's only 17, but he still has had an internship. He's like, I can do it from home. I said, well, no, you drive now. You should try to go in because that's how you learn. You watch other people. You watch your mentors. that's how you learn. But I would say the flip side of that, and we have demonstrated case studies all across India, all across the Middle East. It is bringing economic opportunity to areas where they wouldn't otherwise have it, and growing that GDP in that way. So, for example, in India, we've done a lot of work around creating sort of workplace circles. If you think about the woman in India who lives in a village, who it's tough for them to leave the village. Their husband might go somewhere into the city, but and stay there for extended periods of time and make a living. But if you are able to leverage your capability close to home, still take care of your traditional job duties that you cannot escape and maybe don't want to escape, you can still contribute to the economy, to your family, bringing paychecks. My aunt, actually, my own aunt, she runs my aunt and uncle have a nonprofit where the whole purpose is to bring infrastructure and skilling to areas of India, especially for women, where they can't access it. And this type of digital corridor really enables that and makes these kinds of economic opportunity much more global.
Well, last year we had President Trump speak at the summit, and he zoomed in. And
he did zoom in, I'll tell you that.
And now he's back to the office, so he's coming back. So
we also power a lot of the video services from the WEF, so it's WEF enabled, but we're in the back.
Great. Well, good commercial for you. Bhavna, basically, technology is going to play a very pivotal role as we build this corridor. Yeah. Ports, airports, payments, cyber are trying to integrate complex technology on platforms which can talk to each other. How do you see this moving forward? Because what you have is areas where some countries are not talking. You have Israel in the middle. You have basically Jordan there. You have Saudis. And then moving forward to the Europe itself. Your perspective on that?
As I talked about, the entire digital layer needs to be the backbone, Mukesh, for it to really succeed. And when we are talking about that, we also need to see that, especially when, it's a highly fragmented, multi-region corridor, and not just the entire power, thankfully, is not concentrated on just one region, which is actually a good thing because, there's a lot more that will pass through multiple regions. So that's a good thing. But because it's also strategic, it needs to ensure that, it should be able to see things the way things are, especially digitally, right? When the action is happening, you should be able to see that, what is really happening on the port, what is really happening, in the energy hub, what is really happening logistically. And for that, you need that data to be seamless. So I think that is really important that, how do you put those sensors out there? How do you deploy the right technology for everybody, every stakeholder who's involved in this to see things in a standardized manner and not really concentrated on one side. And secondly, very important that when you're looking at that, when I talked about earlier the intelligent edge piece, you should be able to use technology to be able to think and take decisions locally and not really centrally weeks later. I think that's also going to be an important part. Third piece, if I were to just further add to it, you need to see that when you're doing that, how do you remove a lot of manual decision making and automate as much as possible so that you're able to move a lot faster, especially when we're talking about a digital corridor. And at the bottom, everything needs to be resilient, secure, trusted platform so that when you're continuously scaling, you're going in a direction where everybody has a trusted framework, the way usually there is when there is a single region controlling it, but here being multi-region, you need to have that digital can actually play a really good leveling role in order to create a lot more transparency when you're trying to scale it up.
But the other factor is how do you manage? Because cross-border, you do have, among certain countries, a sense of corruption. And they will resist this because technology brings a sense of transparency. And so how do you shift that culture?
I think this is the only way when you were to digitize it, when you have the transparency, when you have the sensors, there's a lot of decision making which otherwise would happen manually. And yes, in the beginning, there are always teething issues. Whenever you look at any technology, and I mean, yes, the only good side of a lockdown was that everybody started doing the meetings online, right? I mean, when in the beginning, everybody resisted because people thought that, it'll be very difficult to do work out of home. But similarly, when you're talking about some of these areas where in the beginning, people are going to resist, but when you slowly move that away, when you have dashboards where everybody is able to track, that is what will lead to a behavioral change. But that's the only way, because the moment you have everything running manually, then it's a black hole. You don't really know what's really happening.
Let me jump in on this because I 100% agree with you, Bhavna. One of the reasons I'm here in Davos, and every year we say the same thing, and it even exists in the United States. If you think of we don't have a centralized privacy framework. The EU and the US, we don't have a set. It still seems to change pretty frequently. But cross-border data flow is so important. And it is so, the thing that I try to say when I try to push for this is that it is an economic driver for your country. And when you put more restrictions, especially on restrictions on small and medium-sized businesses, and by the way, we're not a hyperscaler, so we don't have an unlimited checkbook. But if you put restrictions on best-of-breed innovators, suddenly you are not going to have enough competition. The country is not going to, over the long term, the country is not going to be able to leverage that economic opportunity. And it is going to be sort of going backwards in many ways. So I think continuing talking about this is not physical movement. So, I was just, the San Francisco to India route got changed in the last year, I would say. And there were lots of direct flights that, for good reason, could not operate anymore. And I was thinking to myself, goodness, if this were digital trade, we'd all be completely disadvantaged because you expect now that you're going to be able to wake up in where I live in Saratoga and have a call with my country manager in Bombay. You expect that. Yeah. And if you couldn't do that because you were subject to those same limitations, it's almost taking us backwards.
But Aparna, when you look at technology, especially Zoom, the access is limited people who have access to internet. But you have a vast number of population which don't have that access. And so they're not able to leverage those capabilities. So how do you basically avoid that digital divide and ensure that at least there's a empowerment and level playing field and opportunity for the masses?
I mean, that's a great question. Obviously, you need the internet for Zoom to work. What we try to do is, the product is such a simple architecture, and some of the reasons why we've been able to be so successful is if you look at it, we actually do the video and audio at the client. We're not in the cloud. It's not expensive for us to actually do the processing at the client level, and then it doesn't suck up resources. We have an incredible video performance, even in very, very low bandwidth situations. So I was on a trek in India, and I was able to get on work calls with crystal clear quality, video with challenging Wi-Fi. That in and of itself is a democratization. Do I have an answer for when there's no connectivity? No. But again, when you have digital transparency and you're able to provide capability to more percentage of the population, it does uplift that country economically, and that we have to sell that point. So when we want to do business in a country, we always talk about the economic gains. So if you have, if 50% of your population, it depends on what your population is, but if 50% of your population is women, if you enable those women to work where they are, that helps you and grow your GDP. So that is sort of an argument that we as business also have to make.
Yeah, I have to say, a couple of months ago, Gaurav and I, we were up climbing a peak in Colorado and realized that we have a call in the next 5 minutes with the CEO for a large global company. And just on top of the peak, we just jumped in a Zoom call. It worked.
It will work.
So, and at least the background was beautiful.
And if you enable noise suppression, they don't even know where you are.
Yeah. Renata, basically, you focus on industrial automation, and this is a great opportunity as you look at the ports and airports and other areas. But also, there's a risk factor because we are living in a world which is kind of not stable. We're living in a world where the global order is shifting, and companies and countries are looking at holding back certain investments, but at the same time reprioritizing the investments, and IMAC becomes that priority which we are seeing in every aspect. But how do you manage risk when you get into that environment?
Mukesh, it's important to stay positive in the current environment because for sure risk is always the first thing in our mind, but let's not forget the chances. I was reading yesterday the World Economic Forum risk report, not the whole 120 pages, that will be for the train later tonight, but in their executive summary, they mentioned three things: sustaining economic growth, accelerating innovation responsibly, which is an important adverb in my view, and build adaptive capacity. And in order to do that, they put forward the topic of better and more intense collaboration. It's interesting because this is exactly what was mentioned in our Customer Excellence Summit this week at Schaeffler. Our 4 divisions, our 4 regions were discussing this in deep after an important merge we did 2 years ago, which is now all concluded and integrated. And of course, collaboration is the most important aspect on which we need to convert into sales what is beautiful ideas that are in workshops, in slides, in strategy dialogues. So when it comes to risk, of course, diversification is the first thing that comes to the mind. But for a family-owned company like Schaeffler, we always were diversified. And I used to work 25 years in investor relations, of which 6 at Schaeffler. And I can tell you that sometimes the financial markets drive us corporate people crazy because of the short-termism. You may have some cohorts of investors who accept and understand diversification. It's good that you have 4 divisions. It's good that you are in 4 different countries. And then you need to do your capital allocation properly. But then sometimes you have investors who are too much on the next hype, or investment bankers and analysts that are too much on the next IPO they need to push. So if you would have listened to them, you would have put all your money on China, all your money on electric vehicles, nothing else, no industrial, no robotics, no factory automation, no planes, no trains, no renewable energy, no APAC, no Europe, no America. So the important thing is that in the corporate, it's good to listen to everything, but then also to look not only the short, but especially the mid and the long. And this is why I think there are chances for sure for us, especially in India, because we've been there 65 years. We have 3,600 employees. We have 6 factories. We grow double digit. And especially it's a country where you have 30 cars every 1,000 inhabitants. It's the #1 producer of agricultural machinery. So these are incredible chances for us. But I would say that in the continuum of IMEC, you have the Middle East, where there is infrastructure, and off-road is important. Also, in order to enable your networks to work, you need then trucks. And the trucks need bearings. And here we are with the bearings. And the other thing is that let's not forget not only the 7.4% growth of India, expected next year, but also Germany, Italy, France. We are flirting with 0, but maybe there are things we can do because, of course, it's not only about defense, it's also about infrastructure. And I'm a big fan of the Draghi report, and I think that you need to invest in education, you need to invest in networks, but you need to invest also in infrastructure. And being based in Berlin, I know what that means. You may know about the big blackout we got. And the 28th regime enabling companies to be more agile and cutting down red tape. I hope this becomes reality. Mrs. von der Leyen said something yesterday. Let's hope that this becomes reality, because that innovation, those startups, they cannot deal with 27 different red tape. And of course, the Mediterranean and the Mittelstand are a natural part of IMEC.
Well, thank you. Bhavna, when you look at the IMEC corridor, India, Middle East is a big portion. Women participation in workforce is very minimal. In fact, when you look at India, last over 10 years, women participation workforce is coming down. And you run a large team. Any thoughts, how do you increase that as you build the organization, as we look at IMEC from that perspective?
Yes, that's a very important point, and in fact, it spans across different industries, and especially when we talk about IMAC, even more important, because it's not just about giving more opportunities. I think it needs to be, again, it needs to be built in from day zero, and not as an afterthought. When you do that, when you look at women participation, when you look at inviting them to create opportunities at the board level, at the policy level, at the decision-making level, that's where you create a lot of role models. When that happens, there is a really nice, cascading effect when people start seeing that women, or the diverse workforce is out there making decisions and not just executing decisions. So that's the top layer, which is equally important than all the other layers. Then, the middle part is you need to ensure that there are enough and more opportunities, especially, when we are looking at it from our side as well. This is exactly what we look at, that, the top and the middle when it comes to entrepreneurs coming and participating in IMAC, right? Software innovators. It's also about creating enough and more skilled laborers so that they're a lot more confident and, raise their hands and say, yes, we can participate, we can contribute. And thirdly, it's very important that we don't leave it to the government alone, especially when it comes to IMAC. We also ensure that public sector companies, private sector companies, they also take that responsibility to say that we will hire right? We will ensure that we also groom, we support over a period of time so that everybody, when you look at the entire pyramid, everyone is contributing. And not just saying that, it's just a tick mark because it's something that is nice to have. It is definitely not. It is definitely the fabric of the entire, all industries put together. If you look at it, which is very intentional and not just an HR conversation, you will see magic happen. And it's very important because I definitely believe that, especially when it comes to an IMAC kind of a corridor, it's not going to be built on steel and data alone. It's going to be built on inclusion. It's going to be built on talent. It's going to be built on trust. So this is extremely important to be considered.
Thank you. Aparna, I remember when COVID happened and everybody started moving on to Zoom, the competition basically floated that Zoom is a Chinese company and you can't trust. And you guys did a fantastic job. It's an American company run by American Chinese and American Indians, and you basically dissipated all of that. Tell us about it, because it has a, how do you fight as you go through the IMEC corridor? Some of these rumors and enunciation has to be fought as you move forward, and that's a good story.
For me, I view it as, and in response to what Bhavna is telling, she's 100% right. There is economic opportunity to be had in every corridor. And you will get a lot of FUD. There's no other word to put it. There's a lot of FUD thrown at you. And you have to just be singularly focused on doing what you say and saying what you do. And I think that's how well, first of all, our founder yes, he's ethnically Chinese, just as I am ethnically Indian, but I'm about as American as it gets. Actually, I can code switch pretty well. I'm not. I think he's worse at it than me. But you know, this is the beauty of America, and I think this is something that I have learned along the way. My parents came to America when we were very young, and they could do whatever they wanted. My dad was very adventurous. He was an IIT engineer. People asked me if I was in the military. My parents were in the military because we moved around so much. But no, there was opportunity to be had. You put yourself, my mother didn't work in India, but when she came to the US, she's like, I'm not sitting at home while these girls are at school. So she became a database administrator. I mean, right off the bat. This is the thing that economic opportunity provides to you. And what I think the best way to demonstrate or to change a narrative, especially when it's false, is point out what are you doing for a region that is really uplifting the region. And when you talk about bringing more people or having a more inclusive workforce, even though the West seems more developed, I have to tell you, even in Silicon Valley, every time I speak, even in our company, there is a woman who will text me, and a female engineer will say, oh my God, you just call it like it is. I just love watching you. And it's a responsibility. You feel a responsibility to enable that person. If that is happening in Silicon Valley today, imagine what is going on in Metropolis, West Bengal. Like, that's insane. So not giving up, continuing to focus on your message. The reason we change that narrative is we, first of all, spoke the truth. And then we were very transparent on where, if we messed up, we messed up. If we were going to change something, we changed something. We were very transparent about it. And we told our customer base what we were going to do, and then we did it. So that consistency, that transparency, over time builds trust. And if you continue to do that, you can uplift, or at least make a small dent in uplifting broad swaths of the population.
Thank you. Bhavna, how do you manage those expectations as a women leader?
Every single day. You know, I don't think this is an academic exercise, especially in our company. We take it super seriously. And that's the reason I've ensured that at least it's not an HR conversation. I've ensured every single leader in our company is responsible, intentional about doing this, not because, I want to say that, hey, we need to encourage more diversity, because scientifically it is proven when there are diverse forces, right, diverse opinions, it does lead to better productivity. So I focus on that we do this because of its merit, not because it's a good to have conversation. And which is the reason I said we do it every single day. We don't do it because, it's one day which we need to celebrate. We do it every day. It's like the fabric of the organization. And when you do that, it becomes effortless. It's like driving. When you're starting to drive in the beginning, you're like, what do I do? Brake, this, etc. But when you internalize this, and when people who believe in it also internalize, that's where it becomes effortless. And that's what we do.
That's great. Renata, your perspective, working...
You mean also more coming from the women female angle, because on this I didn't add anything. For sure, I work for a company where there are many engineers. You can imagine, right? So in terms of women participation, actually the numbers we have in India are higher than in Europe. It's not a surprise, right? But things also happen gradually. When I started my career in banking in the 90s in France, you didn't need to talk about diversity. It was very diverse already, in terms of ethnic, nationality, and gender, and age as well. I worked in luxury in HPC. That was quite diverse. Of course, when you move to technology and to engineering and Germany, well, probably that's territory that needs still some rebalancing. So, of course, the things are moving, and especially things are moving also within the company. The more people connect and the more the teams are reshuffled, the more this is definitely helping. It makes also the company more resilient, because of course the perception of risk is also different, I would say. And for us, it's important also the youth aspect. The young citizen, the young voter, the young consumer, the young entrepreneur, the young employee, well, this is an angle that also strategically we are looking at, even if we are doing B2B. Because in the end, what young people vote has also an impact on how countries progress, which the policies are taken, which infrastructure projects are privileged. So let's not think about young people only as demographic data. Germany, Italy, Japan, old countries, India, Indonesia, young countries. There's more than that. And I think that in corporates, we do have a duty also to carry on this attention, besides what is all the, I would say, bad propaganda that in this moment is, I would say, polluting a bit the infosphere.
Can I just add one thing? This is so timely because all of you ladies here in Davos are going to know what I'm talking about. But yesterday, names not to be mentioned, we were at a big dinner, so maybe 100 people or so, and we walked in. I walked in with my head of government affairs, who is probably a whole foot taller than me, maybe even more, actually, now that I think about it. And he's a big guy. Okay, so I'm small, 5'2". So, and there were people already talking. And to enter a conversation when you're 5'2" and everybody around you is 6 and above, it's a physical block. It's not even it's not an attitude. It's a physical block. You're all laughing. You know exactly what I mean. So, and they were blocking him. It was hilarious. And he looks at me, he goes, "This is what you go through, isn't it?" I said, "Oh yeah, all the time." I said, "But you know what? You have to be strategic. You cannot just be like, oh my goodness, I feel so bad. So I go sideways because I'm small." He's like, "Oh, I see your strategy." So I go sideways, I made space, and I brought him in. And he's like, "This is brilliant." So I would say, if you're going to talk about inclusivity, you can't wait for the world to include you. You have to be strategic. How are you going to do it? If you're small, you go sideways. Get it done.
That's true. That's I'm cautious of the time, and I'll open to the audience for questions. Think about it, but I just want to come back to you, Aparna. Zoom is at a stage where people are expecting, beat me up. In the sense is, I want to say AI technology. Where do you see the vision of Zoom as you move forward?
Yeah, so we leverage AI across our platform to make you more connected, to allow our users not to replace the human, but to make the human being better, to allow folks to automate repetitive tasks, make you more productive, allow for more creative pursuits, even spend time with your friends and family. Gosh, God forbid you do that. So that is the focus for us. And, we are the closest to the conversation. So if you ask, where the Hamilton saying, you got to be in the room where it happens, we are that first line where we are the room where it happens. And so we're very well primed positioned to help our end users take their conversations to completion. So for example, using AI to provide summaries of meetings, action items, notes. It will follow up for you. It might even schedule a follow-up meeting for you based on your own desired workflow that you want to put in. You can create a custom AI studio where you have personal coaches. It can take a look at your own meetings and sort of coach you. You'd have a more effective outcome if you said this and this and this. It is really user-directed. But there's so many use cases where you can use AI to make the human being much more productive, and that's what we're focused on.
That's great. Great. Questions? Well, let me just follow up then. We have 5 minutes, and I'm going to just throw a question at all of you. When you look at, you're very successful as a woman, and dealing in a very complex environment. Industrial automation is more of a man's world. Technology tends to be also man's world. And I have to say one thing on India. Today, when you look at India, there's a picture, if you recall, where Obama and the team were looking at when they were went and killed Osama bin Laden, you can see people were kind of mesmerized looking at that video. There's another picture of coming from India when India's mission to Mars happened. And there's a picture of all the people looking at it when it was making it to the orbit. And 70% of the people behind that success were women. And they all came from tier 2, tier 3 engineering schools, not IIT, which is the premier school itself. So the question I have to ask you is, because it's an extra struggle in corporate environment, what are the one or two principles which drove you, or your light path which made you successful? Renato, start.
I would say dare, and also resist any attempt, also from corporate cultures, to change your personality. That's quite important. As a leader, so this more in my career, as a leader, for me what is important is still to hire young, brilliant people. What I'm seeing in Berlin, too many companies not hiring. I see a resume growing with internship without end, because these young, brilliant minds that studies during COVID at the moment find, I would say, very not the right competition from ChatGPT and so on. I think AI is important for us, digital twins for sure, but let's trust in the young, brilliant minds that are leaving our universities. That's super important.
Thanks.
That's a very interesting question. There are so many things, but I'll try to remember too very clearly. So one thing that has really helped me throughout, and yes, I've been in rooms. I started career early, and I've been a co-founder of some of the companies, and I do remember being the only woman, the youngest, and the only woman. People don't take you seriously. It's only when you start earning your stripes, that's where they sit up and take notice. And it does take time. And I think what really helped me throughout was this resilience, which I've exercised every single day. I'd never say no to learning. I'm very, very curious when it comes to, and maybe, that's how I grew up, in a very highly competitive world, because there were very few role models. So all the more important that, I was out there learning and figuring out that, yes, I may not be the loudest voice in the room, but I really need to know what I'm saying, so that I can focus on the quality of the conversation and not the tonality of the voice, because that was extremely important. Second thing, again, what I always thought, that there is no limit to what you really want to do, as long as you're leading authentically. If you're true to who you are, you really know what you want to do, and not just really trying to fit in, because that's where you fumble. That's where you're like that. Do I really want to do this just because everybody else is doing it, and then you don't get it right. So I think being authentic to who you are, and that's what centers you, and being resilient, that has really worked. Yeah.
Thank you. Aparna?
So I'll just say that I think being who you are is critical. I am the same person at home with my husband. I'm the same person in this chair, same person at work, and same person with the board of our own company, on an outside board I'm on, same person. And sometimes it can be daunting because you're different than the people around you. But actually, what I've been told over and over in the last 2 decades, most of the people I come into contact with, or even my teams, they're like, that's why we like you. Because this is your superpower. You are who you are, and it's a breath of fresh air. And so I think harnessing that and remembering you don't have to change your personality, like Renata said, that's critical. Number 2, I got a nickname in law school. I went to law school. My nickname in law school was she's like Teflon. Not the chemical part, just the nonstick part. So don't use Teflon, yes, but the whole nonstick part is what, you can say whatever you want to me. I'll be like, thank you very much. And if I don't agree with you, I just move on. So don't create a thick layer that you don't feel super sensitive, because people will say all sorts of stuff to you. And if you take every single thing to heart, of course it hurts your feelings. But if it affects your behavior, then you are hurting yourself, nobody else.
Thank you. Thank you to all three of you sharing your thoughts and experience. And a round of applause for the panelists, please. Thank you.